second. Sailor, how the hell have you been, man?
How's it going, Malcolm? Here we go.
Man, I love the new song I just heard.
Oh,
Love
yeah.
the new song I just heard. And, you've been on here before a couple times. This is really round 3.
Yeah. Right, round 2, round 3, was it round 2.01?
Yeah, 2.01. But so I wanted to ask you what's your new music project you're doing? Is it Sailor's War Plan?
Yeah. So like the first time we came down here, I came down here with you and recorded a bunch of songs. It was under the same moniker, right? SWP. So back then it stood for Saint Whiskey Prophecies. And then we took a turn off of that and changed the name to Scars of Judas. And that's what we released, those 5 songs we currently did with you under the Heathens EP. So you can, that's out on the digital streaming platforms now. You can go find them under Scars of Judas and listen to Heathens and Rest in Peace, the songs that we did with you last time. And Rest in Peace and Heathens get some serious streams. And like I was telling you earlier before the podcast, I mean, those 2 are hit tunes. And I tell people all the time, not to shameless plug here, but you make them songs better, right? So anyway.
Oh, thank you, man.
You're welcome.
I thought they turned out really great.
Oh, they were incredible, and especially what they were when I first brought them in, and that's where the strength is, right? And I always tell people about coming down here, it is, you think you're good, you think you know what you're doing until you get around people who have done it as long as you have, or people around you, and then you go.
I've been doing this. I've been producing for 30 years. Actually producing for 22 years, but I was just a full-fledged freaking engineer,
right?
For years, and I paid my dues, and I was around people that knew what they were doing, and
right.
More inspired me more than anything. I don't copy anybody. I've definitely had people say I'm like a young Peter Collins, which is a very flattering, very, very flattering. And then I take stuff over to Peter and he tears it apart.
Right.
He doesn't tear it apart, but he the mixing is something he really, drives me at, what I'm saying?
I'll tell you, to answer your question, sorry, I never got that answer. So
okay.
That turned into, we released Scars of Judas and those 5 songs out on the digital platforms. And then my mother-in-law got put in the hospital with pneumonia-like symptoms, this has happened to her before. So totally expecting that it was going to get in, be treated, get out. So this time she goes in and never comes back out.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. Not to cause it, but anyway, that kind of put things into perspective. Like the things you deal with, or I probably shouldn't be segueing into this, right? But I'm going to. If you're the guy in the band, in any band, that does 90% of the networking and the booking and the writing it becomes real, I wouldn't say burden heavy, but it has, if that guy doesn't do it, it doesn't go anywhere. Well, I was that guy.
Right.
I was that guy. And I loved everybody that was in SWP, and we, Fred was.
Oh, Freddie's.
Yeah.
I gotta love that guy.
Dude, me too.
I love Freddie, man.
We're friends forever. Became friends with Scott, as you know, Charles.
Yeah, Charles.
And then we go from there, man. And when my mother-in-law went and we had been on a hiatus because we were on our way to Europe, and it got shut down because of COVID. And then there were some things about how we could continue to go it had a risk of getting stuck in foreign countries and not being get home if you tested positive. So we just decided not to do that. And we just had nothing but time on our hands, right? And that led into when my mother-in-law went to the hospital and never came out, just kind of put things into perspective. Like, what do I want to put a whole lot of my time into, right? Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And it seems to be the subject of a lot of things, especially some of the things we'll talk about here later, right? And you get to the point to where, all right, you're chasing a dream that I wouldn't say I've been chasing, but I've been a part of since I was in the mild victim days in 1998,
Right.
and moving on. And if I had gotten a chance to go to Europe, that'd have been great. So I just decided, like, I'm done, guys. You know, the band thing is, there was always something that needed my attention. There was always something that needed to happen. And I was the face and the voice for a lot of it, and I welcomed that on. No big deal. Like, I'm not complaining about that at all. But as a result of that, I just realized that the grind of being in a band, right, became very taxing over time. I start losing a lot of the fun I was having.
Right.
When we first got started, it was fun, right?
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand how much work it is, you know? And to be in a band is it's a hard work, man, especially getting along with everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the different personalities, especially when you have a group of guys that are extremely, you know, they're just right-brained.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're creative minds, and the thing about creative minds and what I've learned about myself, not trying to steer off here, but what I've learned is we pick the worst case scenario first, and you know, in any situation, you know, and my soon to be wife can tell you that is exactly how I am, and I don't mean to be. She's either died in a car wreck or she's messing around on me if I can't get a hold of her, you know?
Right.
And it's like, that's just the way I'm built, you know? And I don't think she's messing around on me, you know? But I'm saying, though, that what comes to my mind. Now, with her, I don't think that at all because, you know, I'll always get a hold of her, for one. And for two, you know, she just eases the cushion because she knows how I am.
Right.
So, and hey, man, you know, the whole thing is when there's an argument with anybody in a band or someone you love or your wife or whatever, and you're a creative person, I'll never forget a fight that we had. We barely fight, man. Maybe every year and a half or so, and it usually lasts about 3 or 4 hours, and that's about it. Then I start thinking about that tater. Anyway,
yeah, you never should go to bed mad.
Anyway, so
Thinking about the tater.
In the middle of the argument, I'm like, I can't help it. I can't help this. I can't help how I am and how I feel. I can't help it.
Right.
You're going to have to just look at me like I'm, you know, I can't use that word, but you know,
we're all wired a certain way.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, and right then I could tell the air just cleared, and she's like, I get it. Okay.
Right.
Right. You know?
I'll add to that. Right. I remember when I first, the courting process where I met my wife, and I made it very clear that I play music, I play in a band, I write songs, and and I go fishing, and I love basketball, and I play. Back then, I was young enough to play it, necessarily coach it today, but that's who I am, and these things I can't help my passion for. Right. So I kind of built that up. So it goes back to what you're saying, right? Is like, you can't help it because it's who you are innately in your DNA.
Yeah, and things that's happened to you in life, you know. I mean, and then being a person that's just completely loaded, right brain is a tough. It's tough, you know. I've had people say, "Man, you got extreme artist personality, and you are extreme artist personality." You know,
I am.
Oh yeah, God, I can't even fucking Jesus. I mean, it's fucking jeez. I'm not saying you're worse than me, but you're pretty freaking right loaded.
Pretty intense, right?
Instead of front loaded, I call it right loaded, you know, because it's just the way we are. And
well, I look at it like this. Can I tell you a story?
Sure,
Can I explain something?
Sure.
When I was in my own victim, there came a point in time where, I don't know if your listeners know, I'm sure they do, that Travis Meeks in Days of the New, he sought me out because I recorded in Distillery Commons, and this is going to get to the point of what you talked about. Right. What I wanted to ensure is to make sure that, because of my dominant person vision, it's like not to ever get my clay misunderstood. My clay is what I create, right? I don't ever want it to be misunderstood. And one of the things that you have to do is you'll control it. You'll snake choke that thing to protect it. I was on the road. Travis sought me out after I recorded in Distillery Commons with one of his producers back then. And it's funny I haven't ran into you back in those days because I know you were around. You worked with some of the bands in Louisville that we had played shows with, from like either Outspoken or even Breckenridge at the time.
Right.
But anyway, Travis sought me out. He wanted to do a project with me, half metal, half Days of the New with electric instruments. Because people don't know, Travis came from a metal start in a band called Dead Reckoning. But he heard what I did and he wanted to be a part of it. So that led to me going out on the road and working with him. I got to play guitar because I could play several of his songs on guitar, and I got to play a few shows and play guitar a couple times. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I remember we were in Wisconsin, right? And this is what I'm talking about, having that front-loaded right brain because you want to protect your clay. And there's certain people in the world that you talk to that you go, well, it's not, I probably can't learn much from this individual.
Right.
And
I met those people.
But this experience, you can learn from everybody. So on the way up there, we're talking to Travis, basically saying that all he did was write Jingle Bells. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? Like, he goes, who wrote Jingle Bells? I said, I have no idea. He goes, that's all Touch Bill and Stan is to people. It's a jingle bell. I was like, man, get out. He goes, no one knows who Travis Meeks and Days of the New is. I was like, 16 weeks, #1 rock. That's not true, right? We get to Wisconsin, get to the hotel. We're leaving to go do a show, a live radio performance, play a couple songs, promote the show. And we get in the cab and we're headed to the radio. And we're in the back, and I'm trying to promote, right, and talking to the cab driver up front. And I'm like, are you going to come see the show tonight? She goes, oh, who's in town? And I was like, oh, it's Days of the New. She goes, I don't really know that I know who that is. And I go, oh, yeah, you do. And I start, because I finally found, oh, my God, I love that song.
Right.
And he looks at me and goes, Jingle Bells. The goosebumps telling you that. And I was like, oh, my God, it's true. They will not remember it's not about you, the artist, at all. And here, he fought, people fight to protect that clay. and she word for word regurgitated what he just told me 15 minutes ago. No, they don't know who Days of New is. They just know the Jingle Bell. Now, can't complain about it because, there was a lot of success with that song. So you have to be give and take. So anyway, where it ties back to your song is your original question is because I am that way because there's some of my experience, right? I'm extremely driven in vision because my wife would tell you I'm either on 0 or 11. There's no in between.
There's no.
Right? You work with me.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'll come down here and live in my car or live in the studio. Once I say this is where I'm doing it, the meter moves and I can't dial it back.
Right.
And then if I can't dial it back, I am in, now the vision kicks in. It's one after another, after another, after another. And then okay, then you got to try to bounce that off of people. And when you're in a band, it's hard. Right, because by everything in you, it's the right, and you're driven. Every fiber of your being is.
But you've seen my video on YouTube about leadership in a band, right?
You need that guy. I did watch that video.
If you're in a band and you have an asshole, if everybody in the band thinks the leader of the band is an asshole, and then you're probably in the right band. I'm not kidding, because that guy. There has to be a point where this is what we're doing.
Right.
And it's, I know this sounds very misogynist or whatever, but it's just that way in a marriage too. There has to be one of the two, the woman or the man, be better if the man, because that's the way God made it. But, and I don't care if I offend anybody, but that's just the way it is, But now I got to say though, I don't want to get off on that, but I'll say the woman is really always in charge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but she makes the man feel like he's in charge, and that's just the way, the gravity of it all.
That's their power. That's their superpower.
Because I'll be like, we're doing this, and she'll be like, no, we ain't either. I'm like, come on, honey.
That's where that phrase.
Come on.
That's where that phrase comes from, right? Happy life, happy wife, happy life.
I sound like a little kid. Please, come on, baby.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do that. Well, I'm not going to do
I
that.
need to
then,
buy
okay?
this new toy widget thing. You like the kidding? I need to buy this new thing because it makes me happy.
By the way, Jingle Bells. Man, I worked on the Jingle Bells for a Tom Hanks movie. I forgot which one it was. But not that I don't even know if it came out. I did a medley
Right.
of because I was like, well, what direction you want me to put Jingle Bells in? I mean, they were like, well, I mean, we want you to just redo the song. I'm like, are you serious? So I worked like a month on Jingle Bells, and it was 7-8 minutes long because I had a punk rock version. I had a
Dude, that sounds awesome. I
mean,
should do a metal version.
But his granddaughter is the guy who wrote it. God dang it, I can't think of his name for nothing right now.
Dude,
That really makes me mad.
Check out.
But you know, that guy also wrote Gunsmoke.
What?
He also wrote all these big freaking songs. You know the theme is Gunsmoke. You know, but anyway, but I digress. Sorry,
Right.
I was just thinking because you said Jingle Bells, and nobody can remember the guy's name. So I guess Travis Meeks had a good point.
Right. Let me make sure I make something perfectly clear about that. I don't want my statement to be misconstrued as saying I play guitar in Days of the New. That is not what I meant to say.
Right.
I went out there on the road and worked with him. He wanted my victim to tour with him.
Right.
And we couldn't get, as a band, make that happen.
Right.
So I decided to go and be a liaison and work. It was during the Red tour. He put out the Red record. But anyway, the point of the matter is that because I could play 4 songs off that first record, I got opportunities to get up there and play with the band.
Travis is a hard guy to deal with, man. I mean, he is. You know, I mean, me and him were at the time we were on the same level and the same path, the same kind of thing. You know, but now we're not at all. I don't know. Bless your heart if you watch.
But I want to say this, and I don't want to use your platform to get sidetracked what we talked about. So, but since the subject got brought up, in my world, I give credit where credit's due. I just gave you credit where credit's due. It's hard pressed me to find anybody that can do what you do better, right? And I'll say that,
man.
I do believe that. I've worked with you enough to know that if I want my songs to be better between you and Doc Fox, I have liaisons that can help me whip songs into up to another level. With that being said, there is it's hard pressed for me to find anybody that when Travis and Days of the New, when he's at his best, I find and I've been around the music business and been around a lot of artists. It's hard for me to find anybody that's ever better.
Man,
To be self-taught.
I'm going to tell you, I agree.
And he wrote that. Hey, let me finish it. He wrote that first record as a 15-year-old kid in the basement of his sister's home, right? Isolated from everything else a 15-year-old kid would be doing into the world, right? Friends and baseball or basketball, and he never. I'm not going to talk about his personal life, but all I'm saying is that when I first heard that record, I knew then, right, that it resonated in my DNA, right? That first record, and I listen to it religiously today, and I remember being in New York at Madison Square Garden when he got called to open for Creed, and I was on that tour with him, right? And I heard Scott Stapp telling, right? I don't mean to make it about Travis. I'll shut up after this, but I'll give you some backstory. I don't know if we've ever had this conversation. He looked right at Travis and said, if it had not been for Travis Meeks and Days of the New, there is no Creed.
Oh, I believe that.
I mean, he said that right in front of I also saw some things back there. I was like, wait a minute. Like, there's some things going on. Like,
there's a lot of likenesses to it.
Right. But anyway, the moral of the story is that I not so much as a fan, right? Game recognizes game. That first record is a big part of what perpetuated me into going, music's like music. Like, it made me want to play the acoustic guitar differently than I've ever done it before. Instead of strumming cowboy chords, it really changed things. And then to have him want to do a metal project with me that I've never released, I have to let you hear some of that sometime.
I'd love to hear it. I'll tell you who, man, took his spot was Hugo Ferrara. And I'm going to tell you, that dude, I mean, I don't care if you like Hugo. I don't care if you don't like Tantric, man, whatever. But I'm saying gun for gun, That guy is incredible.
See,
I
I
mean,
know-
he is a
Yes.
fucking beast.
Yes.
He's a beast,
I know
man.
Jesse. I don't know Jesse Vest, but I've talked to Jesse Vest a few times, and he's the bass player. Has been in both of those projects, right? And I'm a huge fan of that first Tantric record too.
Dude, Hugo, he never, ever, ever lets me down.
He's a work monster,
creatively at all, ever. I'm talking like, and I'm doing the next record, and I'm pumped about it. You know what I mean? He's so busy touring and stuff, though. That's the hard thing about guys like that is it's hard to pin them down. And it's like, look, man, the guy's managing them. I'm like, listen, man, you know, you kind of got to pin him down to get here, you know. And like, but no, that dude is fucking amazing.
I've never had the pleasure to sit down and have a conversation with him like I have you or
dude.
even
You
Travis.
ought to just sit down and see him play acoustic guitar and fucking sing. He is all tear it up and a badass piano player. I mean, you know,
He plays the piano?
dude. I mean, I consider myself a pretty badass at piano. You know, man, he has a whole different style than I do at piano. But man, he is incredible, dude. I'm talking like make you cry, man.
Malcolm, I've seen you play. You're pretty damn good, man.
I don't play on his stuff because Travis. Hugo's the one who plays on his stuff when we're working together because he is a bad motherfucker.
Right.
I mean, ain't no doubt about it.
But so, and then you can throw the like a Chris Voles and the Flaw guys like into this conversation we're having about like guys who are driven and have a vision, like they will work diligently to protect that. So you're absolutely all this. We talk about all this to get to a point.
Right.
Like people who have it, work it and are driven to protect it and make sure that it goes as it is in their head. Because if it doesn't, we can't respond. At least I'll speak for me. I can't respond to that. I've seen some of the others we're talking about here, like Travis, have guys like a producer or A&R rep say things, and it just, you could tell it's
Like you're stabbing me.
like you're not hearing me.
I know. And I'll tell you what, Chris Bowles was like that too. I mean, I love Chris, man. I'm just saying, man, hey, you know, and it's funny, man, because I'm friends with like so many guys that are so gifted, and freaking that Louisville area is a good spot, man, where you're from, you know. God, Brian Fox, I mean, no matter what, man, Brian Fox is just a badass, man. I mean, he is amazing. He's an amazing artist, not just a writer, but he's just an amazing artist. Of course, I signed him, you know, to Island. So, you know, me.
I thought for sure he was on his way. I remember being at the headliner show, and I just talked to him the other day, and I sent him a picture of the End of Me song I was listening to. I still listen to some tracks. When he goes, you know, I can't be too sure, but I feel I'm the modern day Job. I keep getting hurt doing the things I'm told.
Right.
Look at that, man. Just it's
oh no, great lyrics. I mean, just amazing.
And then now because people don't know, like we do write songs together under the 16 Bones thing that I do, and he plays guitar, he'll do harmonies, he does the mandolin, he'll put the wards. So like he is a multi-talented musician.
Well, he does all the harmonies for Scotty Austin, and you know I'm doing a new single on him, and he just sent me the rough draft last night. He goes, "Man, I'm gonna see the tracks today." I'm like, "No, because I'm not gonna be able to work on them until the end of the month. Just keep them." Well, he's still got to sing a bridge on it, but anyway, I'm gonna bore people with that stuff. But I'm telling you, and you know, speaking of all those guys we mentioned, you know,
and there's more like Andy Paul from End to Clear. You know what I mean?
What a great band!
Back in Factor 9, big fan.
What a great singer!
Yeah,
Andy Paul.
And
is
I never
just
got a
class
chance.
A.
He is, and I never got a chance. Before we go any further, like I remember seeing Flaw play for the first time in the Brewery Thunderdome. Right.
Right.
Remember them days?
Oh yeah. I remember the brewery. Yeah.
So good. And they did a version of "Jump Around" by House of Pain. That's like what Flaw does, and that's when I haven't like. Anyway, what I'm trying to get to here is that I'm glad to see that he's still doing it, and he's super talented. He actually sang on a record. We're on a record together on my first Mind Victim record that I put out. I don't know if you ever heard. I have to let you listen to that too. But anyway. You're absolutely right. Right. It was always a source of talent down there and so many great players. And I remember when I first saw Factor 9, which was the band that Andy Paul was in before he became in Clear, and I love Clear and Clay and them guys. And I was like, oh man, there's another one. And then there was other bands, like there's band after band in grind.
And man, I'm gonna tell you,
Breckenridge,
fucking badass. That singer, man, that dude, he's Chuck's a great guy too, man. He calls me every once in a while, man. Talks for an hour, not even nothing, But no.
And the Maxwells, what was Chuck Mingus and the Spanky Lee.
Man, there's been a lot of great bands from that area. I mean, there really has.
Yeah.
I mean, Louisville has always been a great place to go find great talent,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, I wouldn't go up there to find a wife.
Dave Frazier.
There's not be a place I'd go find a wife.
David Frazier and Outspoken.
Yep. David Frazier. Incredible. I mean, incredible artist, man. I mean, so many artists should have made it out of there. And you know what? They kind of hit that where the rock and roll was just kind of dying down. Right. Too, a lot of those were. But then you had to, then you still got the ones that hit the platinum and gold and freaking big freaking number ones like Hugo and them guys and Tantric and,
now that seems like there's a passing of the torch. Like some of these bands that are out there now, like I'm totally nobody in this regard, but like there's a hardcore band called Knocked Loose.
Right.
And they're on the national scene. They play the big Louder Than Life, and they're touring like they're a big deal. And they're like what My Own Victim was in the '90s to Louisville. We were the hardcore band, right? We were the underground hardcore. But hardcore in our day was like punk hardcore, like New York style,
right?
Or them fast drum beats. Right. Now it's more like drops and low tune guitars, and they are that version of My Own Victim. And they're out of Louisville, and I never saw those guys coming. But
I'll have to check them out.
They're out of Oldham County. They've been around a minute, but man, they super popular. They blew up big, and I was like, I've never heard of these guys. Like super, became a fan. But anyway, the more I'm trying to say is that you're right. It was a hot spot for the longest time, and the who's were always there. You know what I mean?
I just want to talk a little bit more about music, and then we'll move on. But
all right.
Man, I was on the phone with Scotty Austin, and earlier we talked for about an hour. Man, I can tell he's a little homesick. He's excited about the new single, and stuff. And they've been kicking ass on the road. I'm talking drawing big. Freaking, I mean, shows are freaking really doing great. Mm-hmm. I'm getting calls from all over the country going, man, he is freaking on fire. And I'm serious. His band and him, I said, put me on speakerphone. I got to ask you a question. I got to ask all y'all questions. Name one artist, up and coming, new rock singer. Name just one.
Me?
No, I'm talking about a guy that's freaking no.
I mean, you want me to name somebody?
Yeah, do you know? Now I'm talking something because Freddie, he tried to do this the other day. He couldn't. Of course it was some other band. He's some breaking chick or whatever might be that. I don't know who the hell she is. Never heard of her.
Brand new rock singer, up and coming. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only one that comes to mind listen, you don't take this is me coming from a very limited source, right? There's the kid. He's not a kid. There's the band Bad Flower.
They've been around forever.
Have they?
Yep.
Okay. Then I'm thinking Jelly Roll-ish.
Yeah, but Jelly Roll's not a rock artist. I'm talking about modern rock.
But isn't he not becoming one? He's not making that move?
I don't know. Jelly Roll's not a...
No, but I will tell you, you're right. Where is the Metallica and the AC/DC and the C?
No. You know who Brett Hetfield was, and you knew all those guys growing up, and David Lee Roth. Then you got like all these big singers, Axl Rose.
Yeah.
You name it. You know.
Right.
And the thing is like. I told them they couldn't name one. I said, name one new modern rock band.
Can't.
And they're like, no. They're like, we don't know. I mean, because it's faceless music. It's like modern rock has become an actual. I said this on one thing, and it's the truth. Last Tater Talk we had, or now it's two Rednecks and Junior.
Did you change the name to Two Rednecks and Junior?
Yeah.
Pretty dope.
I thought that's what I wanted to call it to begin with. Tater talk. Nobody knows what a tater is unless you know me. You know what a tater is if you know me. But anyway, the whole point is like now it's the class clown who wins. It's the class clown. It's not the stud on the football field that's freaking running touchdowns or freaking making tackles or freaking an athlete that's freaking badass. Because I look at Axl Rose, I look at all those guys, Jim Morrison, they were studs, man. But it's become a joke now. It's become a joke. It's become the class clown now is the guy in front. He's the most popular guy, not the stud. Not the guy who's really running touchdowns, who's freaking making a difference. Now, it's all class clowns, you know? And because
I can see that.
Yeah, because it's gone to computer geeks producing, and they could wear me out on freaking computers. Well, I mean, they ain't going to wear me out on Pro Tools. But I'm saying...
I was going to say, I've seen you work, man, so I don't...
Yeah, I'm pretty dang fast, and I'm pretty dang good. But I'm saying, though, but you put me behind a desk, a real console, I will whip anybody's ass. I mean, I will kill anybody because I worked for the company, SSL, you know, like, I know consoles, and I'm really looking at Saturday. I'm tracking it at 1979, and I love that studio. It's an old MCI board, but it's got all kinds of great outboard gear, and it's such a vibe, man. And, you know, I think they know I love the studio by now because I booked there all the time.
Right.
You know, we were going to go somewhere else, and I went, man, let me call Chris. And you heard the whole conversation,
right.
And then actually it happened. So, but anyway, and that's not who the producers are now. Right. The producers aren't the guys who know gear. They're the guys who know plugins. Those are the guys who's never put their hands on the gear that I have. You know, and it's a disgrace to me. But I'm old school, but I'm new school.
Right.
I got a call this morning from somebody going, man, I just want that new school touch on it, man. I'm thinking, wow.
Right. Well, I mean,
started laughing because I was kind of under my breath because I'm old school.
Right. Well, me too. So I never get a chance to really answer your question after all this time. You asked about SWP, right? So you talk about technological advances, right? To kind of bring this back full circle. When I talked about, I had some songs left over, and I came back down here, and you got me in contact with Jameson. I had a great recording experience with him, and now it's going to be called Sailor's War Plan, and it literally was he and I,
right? Well,
doing the entire record. Like, so you talk about technological advances. There's a lot of things that come along with technology. Now, although I went to college for it, I'm not the most guy in favor for it. I don't believe that this whole AI future we're building is going to be lucrative to our long-term health as a species, but that's just me. But now it gets to where they can AI fake, like you don't even AI fake anything, right? So it's going to eventually get to where you may even have to worry about singing. They can just sample your voices and put together a song for you. But anyway, neither here nor there. What I'm trying to get to is that I came down here and done songs, and it was just two of us in the room, and through technology, it allowed that to happen, right?
Well, you're
the know-how of one great producer, you know, and who knows how to use these softwares.
But now, I got to brag about Jameson on some things, man. I do.
Go
that
ahead.
man has put his hand on. He's put his hands on real gear. He's not a hack job. And I'm not saying that if they didn't put their hands on gear, that they're a hack job. I'm just saying he knows what a 1176 does because he's used one. He knows what a Fairchild does because he's used one. Right. But his strong point is guitar playing. I mean, he's just a monster guitar player. I think Jameson is incredible freaking metal player. Yeah. That dude can rip your ass up. He helped me on Money. You know, the Money song that went big with Scotty Austin. And it's funny because I mean, we had a blast on that one. And often me and Jameson didn't see eye to eye because there's certain things, because, listen, I always introduce Jameson to somebody musically, and I always say this about him. Jameson is a hammer. Everything to him is nails.
Yeah.
And that's just all there is to it. There's no sweetheart spot at all. there's no, oh, it's got to be a little soft here, a little soft there. It's just all nails. I mean, he's a hammer, just hammering away at that shit, you know.
He took my licks and showed me how to play them better, take chances on different types of tunings, gent guitars or 7-string guitars, stuff. I just took chances. And then to watch him program drums, like, too, as well. Anyway. No, I mean.
Anyway, enough of plug.
I cannot talk about how excited I am for the War Planned Adventure. I'm trying to get it released here midsummer, sometime in July.
Well,
and Doc Fox is on one of them songs with me.
Yeah, I got to get Jameson on another podcast because that dude, he knows all this conspiracy shit. I mean, he knows a lot of shit about that.
Right.
He cracks me the fuck up. He looks like a dang. I mean, he looks like a Beavis and Butthead character, He cracks me up. Anyway, man, I'm excited to talk about your trip to Point Pleasant. And to you people out there that don't know what I'm talking about, that's where the Mothman prophecies. That's where, if you watch the movie Mothman Prophecies, it's funny. Richard Gere is the star in that, and it's a true story about Point Pleasant. Point Pleasant,
Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
West Virginia, okay. Right. And it's scary because the Mothman thing has been a thing for me. And anyway, I'll let you talk about your experience there because you went through the whole thing, didn't you?
I did. So, a little backstory. I'm a big fan of the movie, and then once I caught that it's a true story, I was okay. Well, in my life, there's certain places I have to go visit. I'm trying to get to where they shot Amityville up in Nantucket.
Oh, geez.
I want to get, not Amityville, I'm sorry, Jaws. My wife just mentioned going to Amityville, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that
one. And I got to, so I took my son to Clarksville to a basketball workout for Austin Peay University camp. And then from there, we went on to Reelfoot Lake to do 3 days of fishing. And while we were there, I was kind of like, okay, we'll have X amount of days left. Heading back to the house, I think my wife was like, you talked about doing the Point Pleasant thing, and we got to look. It's literally only like 3 hours away from Louisville.
Oh, I didn't know it was that close.
It's super close. Come back to Louisville, drop some things off, and it's straight to West Virginia. And then you're driving, right? And you're heading out there, and it's this quiet little small unassuming town that opens up out of the mountains as you're driving along the Ohio River. And the next thing you know, there's a bridge and there's this little small town. And you're within 3 states. You're in, Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, all right here.
Right.
Literally within a few miles of each other. So then obviously, if people that don't know the story, that Point Pleasant is famous in 1966 for the bridge collapsing, the Silver Bridge collapsing, which claimed the lives of hundreds of people. And
how many did it kill?
So if memory serves me correctly, it was 166.
Okay, I thought it was 160 something.
Yeah. So again, don't hold me to that, but I think it's somewhere around that number.
I think so too.
Right. So obviously when you're going across and you're on that bridge, there's this little apprehension.
I know, and it was right at Christmas too.
It was right at Christmas. So we go across into the bridge. The first thing we do, we stop and we see the Mothman Museum. Of course, I'm going to stop there, right? Of course, you're going to stop, right? To get the gist of it. Like, I agree that the strawberry and the sundaes on the Mothman, the strawberries and the pecans on the Mothman sundae is the good stuff. But let's get into the heart of it. What's the ice cream, the core of the Mothman story? And I got to talking to a guy there, and we walked around the museum, and I'm 2-3 T-shirts, because you never know when I'm going to get back, and you start to learn that there was a 1/8-inch crack in the I-beam, just an 1/8 inch, that they say is what led to the demise and the collapse of that bridge. It was a design flaw in the I-beam under one of the bridges that caused it to be just that weekend on a day where there was, they say, was excessive weight on the bridge than there normally is because of the holiday. So excessive, more than average weight on an eighth of an inch split in an I-beam with traffic on the bridge cause it, in their theory, to collapse. That's what it's known for at the heart.
But I was going to ask you, I mean, if Point Pleasant is such a small town, why would there be so many people on that bridge at one time?
I don't know.
That's what gets me about when you told me that this morning. I'm like, it's a small town. I thought the whole bridge was like packed bumper to bumper with cars. Had to be to kill 160 something people. Right. So what was the thing? What was the
holidays, festivities?
But that was when probably Point Pleasant was a booming town.
So I'll tell you this: you can look at when they were in the movie, because it was filmed in Point Pleasant from time to time. You can look at the town that's in the movie, the Point Pleasant that's in that movie, which is really Point Pleasant, and the Point Pleasant that you see when you go there today, and you see completely two different towns from an aesthetic perspective. Right. And I'm assuming it didn't help, right, knowing that they won't come in Hollywood shooting a movie there, so they got more people to come in to fill in the town. But when you go to that town, there's nowhere near the volume of businesses, active working businesses, and people walking around the streets as you see. But back in '66, when you look at the pictures,
that's what I was about to ask you.
But back in '66, when you look at the pictures, there was way more. There's way more people in it than there is now. So I guess it was, coal mining town outside of West Virginia, river town, a lot of river works. But there, during the holiday, and there was a holiday festival. I think it was a holiday parade or a holiday in-town celebration happening at the time, like Light Up Louisville, I would guess, something similar to that, where everybody goes into town and it takes care of Christmas festival.
Oh, I got you.
Right.
Okay.
But so there was an influx of people. Because when I first walked in, I was like, man, there's like a few businesses were open. But let me be clear. I'm not trying to say that it was not a prosperous town. What I'm saying is I go up there on the 4th of July day.
Yeah, not much happening.
Not much is happening. But they're getting ready to have a parade, and I wasn't going to stick around and get stuck in town. But they were having a 4th of July parade. So I walked to the museum, got the facts about, how they thought the bridge collapsed. But here's where everything gets interesting, right? Earlier in 19th, if you know the story because you follow the
right. I definitely followed the Mothman.
Mothman and the Bigfoot and what they call it,
cryptozoology.
Cryptozoology.
I'm not a cryptozoologist, but what I am is I'm a person with an open mind, and I know that if people have seen things so many times, there's something to the story. I mean, you know what I mean?
That's the truth. So earlier before the collapse of the bridge, Roger and Linda Scarberry was out with friends, what was then known as the TNT Works factory, where they made munitions for World War II.
Right.
Which I went to, I went, and I'll tell you that story in a second. So it was there that the first sighting happened. That they're teenagers, you kind of sets like a horror movie, teenagers in a place they shouldn't be, and something comes and greets them,
right,
scares them off. So they hightail it out of there. Well, Linda went on record to say that they're doing 100 miles down this old country road, and this thing is flying over the top of their car, and all she can remember seeing was the shape. It looked like a big bird with wings with big giant red eyes. And that started the first sighting. Obviously, she come back home. She's shaking. One of the residents there said, who were friends of the family, said that the doctor had to be called in. She had to be sedated and calmed down. And all she kept saying was, those eyes. I found that interesting because that's where all this thing seemed to start. And since then, and the whole entire town, if you talk to certain people, it seemed like they were under some sort of duress. Like it was, you could tell that things were uneasy in the town because people kept having strange encounters seeing this thing, and they would see lights above the munitions plant, similar to what's happening in today's world with UAPs, right? Right. So they would see lights and sightings of lights or a cigar-shaped craft or a dish-shaped craft off into the mountains.
See, they didn't have that in the movie.
They did not.
They didn't have that in the movie.
They did not.
And that's very interesting because I didn't know that. That's something I didn't know.
So, depending on what, there seems to be three types of mental approaches as to what was going on with this. Or so, let me finish that story.
Sorry about that.
No, so depending on who you ask, there's three approaches, right? There's three conclusions you can derive to. Since the Scarberry's incident, and she stuck by her story, and so did he, and so did the couple, and they never wavered from it. Much like Fire in the Sky, like that
Right.
thing, he never told a different story his whole entire life, and she never did until she passed away. But people in the town were seeing it. They were seeing it, and this thing looked like a giant bird underneath the tree, and some people who knew that was ancient Indian grounds at some point in time, but in the early days, used to talk about giant thunderbirds, right? In Indian culture,
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
they talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah. They talk about that out west, but I didn't know
Yeah.
around there.
Yeah. So they see giant thunderbirds, and getting to the conclusion of it is that just multiple sightings, and it just seemed to be random with no real what's the word I'm looking for here, pattern. They just see him random stuff. Then, throughout that time, Mothman sightings, people not feeling like they're being believed. Certain people feel like that this thing appeared as a entity to warn people of catastrophes happening. All right, so like it,
Right.
It showed up.
Because the Mothman has showed up in different places, that there was disasters.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Mexico City was one of them.
Rome, Italy.
Rome, Italy. Yep. Now, we as humans, right? You and I as standards by who was not involved, are at the mercy of the stories that were left behind for us to either hear or read, right?
Right.
So, what we do know is in '66 the sightings happen. There's lights in the mountains. There are sightings of craft in the mountains of West Virginia over the TNT Works place. And then later in that year, in '66, in Christmas, the bridge collapses. Now, some people say they saw the Mothman on the bridge
Exactly. The day of it.
the day of it, right? Now, there's also an alternate thinking. Right? In that town, there were men in black who were, I would say, they looked like they were members of government organizations that were coming in. Typical story. Intimidating people, telling them they didn't really see what they think they saw. Don't kind of talk about this. And you can walk through the museum, and they got a great big exhibit talking about these gentlemen, the things they would tell people.
Wow. That's true?
According to Point Pleasant, that they were intimidated to not say anything. And not only did they not listen,
wow. I
they made a whole movie about it.
Right. They certainly didn't listen.
Right. So they were intimidated. So, and then it gets into a theory that I find the most interesting, right? That's maybe the most plausible based on the information and the texts and the stories and the things that you can read, newspaper clippings, and even people in the town who work for the museum or part of the town that could tell you, was it's a growing movement based, especially now, based on what it's been declassified from our government about UAPs.
Right.
That these were that people were seeing this thing, this entity, this being around Point Pleasant, along with lights in the sky. Some people believe that the bridge was collapsed to get the tension away from that, so that it could either leave or be
Caught
and moved. Because here's what I'll tell you: ever since the bridge collapsed, there was never another sighting of the Mothman in that area again.
See, that's what's strange to me. But also the time lapse stuff. That Richard Gere, I saw an interview with him saying that really did happen. Mm-hmm. And that to me is frightening. It's terrifying. He's driving along, all of a sudden he's in.
And yeah, 2 hours. He drove 2 hours from Washington D.C. and the next thing you know, he's in Mount Pleasant,
I know, that's just
Mount
odd.
Pleasant, West Virginia, which is normally like a over 10-hour drive.
Right. That's just odd to me. It's just like, and him showing up at the people's house 3 times.
Yeah.
Like, dude, this is the 3rd time you've been here. Stop coming back here. And him not knowing or remembering.
Right.
He's like, what are you talking about, man? I've never been here. I mean, I was wondering if that happened, but in an interview, he said that really did happen, and that is terrifying. But now you have to ask yourself, and this is the problem I have with the whole thing. If the thing was there to warn people that this was going to happen, why didn't he just go door to door and knock on their door and tell them?
I don't know. It seems to be that only certain people, like, let me back up here. Let me choose my words wisely. That it was targeted for people who were to be affected, because not everybody saw it and not everybody heard it.
Right.
But
they drove the one man crazy, right?
Yeah.
He killed himself.
Right. So those who heard it were either going to be involved or either had dreams, right? But they were involved in the incident and died or were part of that incident with the bridge collapsing, or they end up going crazy. Like in Richard Gere's character, his wife dies of cancer 2 years prior to all this, but he's getting phone calls in the middle of the night.
From her.
Yeah, with her. One of them's her voice.
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Right.
True. That's very odd. And the Mothman thing.
The best part about, not to interrupt you, but here's the part of the movie that should stick out to everybody. That is an element of truth that no one catches. Is when he comes back he goes to Chicago to talk to the guy, right?
Right.
That knows about it. And what does that guy say? He's like, Richard Gere's character, I forgot the name of the guy in the town. He's like, don't you feel like you need, this is kind of what your podcast is based on, right? Don't you feel like you just need to know? And his reply is, we're not supposed to know. We just do.
Wow. I forgot about that part. Yeah. But the Mothman goes back.
Now that's frightening.
That's very frightening. But the Mothman goes back as far as 1,000 years. I mean, maybe even further in history. So it's something. There's something to be said for the Mothman legend.
Right. But it's not a moth. Like you can, like it's not.
Right. It's a man with wings.
Yeah. It's a man with wings or or what's the word? Gorgile, right? Like bat wing, like Batman, bat. Like it's some sort of, or it could be one lady. But this one lady did say it had feathers. So it definitely is. Somebody said, "What's just a giant crane?" So we have 8-foot giant cranes in West Virginia now.
Well,
big enough to pack a man off.
All of them saying they've seen the same thing as
and that's the third level. I forgot.
I see the skeptics though. I see the skeptics when something like that is seen. Because I've dug into a lot of stuff lately that I don't usually dig into, like old legends and stuff, and that are now people are seeing them or have lately and stuff like that. And it's almost like me when I actually saw the Goat Man, and that's around your area.
Yeah. Trestle tracks.
And it was real. It wasn't bullshit. It's like it was real. And I think about that all the time, Every once in a while I'll just think, like, what the hell was that thing, And there was a thing about it on some monsters show the other day me and Tiffany watched. And, I looked there and said, that's what I saw, and it's nobody believes me. They're like, you were on drugs. Right. Like, that's the first thing, well, have you, what were you drinking or what,
Well, that's one thing they do talk about. He's like some of the government agencies that came in said it's a mass hallucination. But I told you earlier today, I was like, how is it scientifically possible that people over the same area can hallucinate about the exact same thing?
Well, it would be possible if they took the same batch of acid.
Like, or your brain's not my brain, so I don't know what. Like, if I'm going to hallucinate about a giant Mothman, what makes you do the same thing?
I don't, but I'm just saying, maybe it's the same batch of acid. I don't know.
Mushrooms.
They all got together for a party, and everybody's handing out freaking acid tabs. I don't know.
It's like when you go do ayahuasca. Not everybody has the same experience when they go to those camps together. Each person's experience.
I know. That's odd.
right?
It's very odd, man.
But-
Or DMT. Everybody sees the same fellas,
Right.
you know.
And I just feel like that you can't, like, you can't, like, that's just, I mean, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor again, but what I do believe is, like, I just find it hard to believe that hundreds of people can hallucinate about the exact same thing.
Right. Well, I mean, and I find it hard to believe too with man, with Bigfoot, you know, or you know, of course now they know that there's a chupacabra, you know, and it's so funny still, dude. I don't want to get off subject, but man, last night I'm watching a thing about Stonehenge, and it's like, what is that noise?
I don't know. It's the Mothman.
It's a Mothman. Hang on, I didn't want to edit anything, but I may have to here. Let me make sure there's not. Hang on. Oh, that's outside.
Oh,
That's our mics. Anyway, people that's listening won't hear it, but
Right.
but anyway, but what was I saying? Oh yeah,
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge. And this woman gets on there, and she says, "Well, you know, Merlin and King Arthur were fictional characters." That is such a fucking lie. They know there was a Merlin, and they know there was a King Arthur because King Arthur is still labeled the first king of England.
Right.
It's like, how in the world can you say something that ignorant? But people just say the stupidest shit, man. And I'm gonna tell you, it offends me, man, bad. I'm sitting there cussing at the TV at 1 in the morning. Of course, my old lady, she's half asleep, just like, oh, shaking her head. I know she's like, oh, God, here he goes again, ranting at the TV. But it's like, shut the fuck up. If you don't know your fucking shit, don't sit there because she's on there like, me. Well, I bet she voted for Joe Biden, too. Well, I bet.
Man, it's getting to the point. The first time I was on your podcast, and we talked about a very controversial subject, and I'm not trying to segue. I want to finish the Mothman thing here, but it's really becoming very clear in today's world that you only can believe half of what you see and none of what you're told. Because there are times I feel like I'm in the Stranger Things upside down. Like I don't know really what they're trying to sell as reality and what's not reality. Like what was used to be reality is now augmented reality, and what's augmented reality is now the reality. It's like they're trying to get you in a state of, I just really don't know, because you can't believe hardly anything you see anymore, right? So this is why, you can come back to that if you want, this is why when I was in Point Pleasant, my wife and I asked the guy in the museums, like, where's this TNT munitions building
Right.
where all this started? How can we get to that? He goes, wow, I don't know. I've never been asked that before. And I'm like, how? Have you not been asked
Where the source is.
where the source is?
Right.
And he really acted like he didn't want to tell us because he was like, wow, I've never been. That's interesting. Then he proceeds to say things, and I'm going to quote, you're going to go down 62, and you're going to turn down right onto this road. And once you get off this road, it'll be about 1-lane road, right? And you're going to look for 6 or 7 inlets off the side of the road. Inlets are little turnoffs, right? And once you start getting into the woods, you'll start seeing inlets. Count 7. When you get to the one that has graffiti on it,
That's awesome.
you're in the right spot. So this starts to paint the picture of a classic 1980s, 1990s horror movie where the out-of-towners come in and ask a very specific how to get somewhere, and then, you know, the 2 guys on the horn are setting them up to be
Right.
murdered in the woods of West Virginia somewhere. So I'm not going to lie to you. My whole entire life, I've not been scared of anything. We're in broad daylight too. But I don't have I usually, when I'm going on these types of things, I make sure I take protection. I didn't have any protection with me. I had a little multi-tool pocket knife, a Gerber kind of thing, right? A Swiss Army knife. We go down the road and it goes into the woods and 7 inlets. There's one with the graffiti. We pull off and we're kind of like, and then you see guys on motorcycles and cars up the road, and they're kind of in the middle of the road, like they're scouting. And I'm like, yeah, this is when you know better, you do better.
Right.
So my wife and I turn around, like we're not getting set up. Like these are just like, and it was completely innocent, more than likely, but we bounce out. And I get to the end of the little dirt road, 1-lane road to get back onto the main road. I'm like, you know what? I'm no punk. Let's go. That's not smart because I got my wife with me, right?
Right.
So I said, if you're game, I'm game. We go together. She's like, sure. I turn around, go back, get the Swiss Army, Blue Army knife. We park. We go in. Totally, they're there for the same reasons we are, right? How the mind creates a reality for you that's not real, out of fear. So we pull off. We cross this barrier, and now it's this abandoned old road that had like 2 ruts down the middle, and there's this Malcolm, I'm not kidding you. There's a body of water to the left. It looks like it's the home of the swamp thing.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it's grass, mossy, with lily pads and flowers out of it, and it's thick and it stinks. And they talked about chemical poisoning in the area right back in the '66 because of the munitions plant. And I'm like, yeah, if this was nighttime, this would not be good.
Wouldn't be a good place to go, though.
Right. So we're walking down, and as you walk down this road, you about a quarter of a mile up, you can't go all the way to the abandoned munitions, but you can see the underground bunkers as you go, as you're walking down the road. And we got about 2 or 3 of them stop, and you could tell that's where they stored ammunition underground. So we go and see it. So we got to see part of the source where all this started. And I didn't get to go all the way up to the main building because they won't allow you to do it. Don't know that I would want to in the event of being able to, because they talk like it was never safe, like it was chemical poisoning and
right. They say that in the movie too, don't they?
Yeah, gases and things that are poisonous to you. So then you get thinking about that. Okay, what's poisonous gases that leaks out? Could that create a mass hallucination?
Yeah, people thinking they're seeing this thing.
Yeah, because she went up there and she's like, to Miss Scarberry, she and those 4 teenagers that were up there, yeah, you're not. It's like the beautiful mind. You're not going to convince him he's not seeing these people. He is seeing them. They did see something.
But they all saw the same thing.
Yeah,
that's the getter.
It is.
I mean, I understand that there's a.
You need to go. You and I need to make a trip.
Me and Tiffany are going. We're going the opposite direction this trip, but then we're going to go. We need to go through there to go to New York anyway.
Right. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to do it a different way. Like I'm going to go. I'm going to try to go as far up to the munitions place as I can. Like till they tell you, like you're supposed to get to some sort of barbed wire thing that you can't go till I get turned around. And then I'm going to eat at the Mothman diner that we didn't know existed when we were there. Like the diner that Richard Gere and them ate in, that's a real diner there.
Right.
I was like, my wife ended up driving 3 miles out of the way to eat at a Mexican restaurant. I was like, well, what? Like, now we know things to be different, so we can go in there and find stuff out.
Now that I know about it, me and Tiffany will go there.
Right. And they have a Mothman parade or festival, right, which is odd in itself. That kind of paints the picture like, okay.
They just want some tourists to come through.
Yeah, some tourist money, right? So is that how this thing got started to begin with?
Right.
But what really drastically shifts my thinking from this being hey, come see Point Pleasant, get money in our economy, come to our town, we need them tourist dollars, like a carny attraction, right? Is because the bridge collapsed, they quit talking about it. It went away. No one saw it again.
Right.
They wanted it. People in the town to tell you, we just want this to go away.
Well, the whole thing about that is, and I was thinking earlier when you said 66, maybe the bridge collapsing is what shut the town down.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me sounds like a pretty logical thing. I mean, when 166 or 160 people, whatever the number, gets killed at one time in a small town that could run a town. Right. I mean, it could run it. I mean, I'm from a 4,000. I think I got 4,000. In my hometown, and I think that would freaking really blow the doors off the place. Right. But I mean, I don't know. There are any small town that loses that many people at the same time would be an absolute. It would be let's get the fuck out of here.
Right. So if you're asking me where my final verdict is in this whole thing, if you were to ask me, I think that is, I am there. My answer to this whole thing is a I'm going to borrow from both scenarios. And I think somewhere, we talk about there's truth on the right, the truth on the left, somewhere in the middle is the real truth. Mm-hmm. That's where I am at with this thing. I do believe there was something up there. If you take that story from South America where the people that saw the alien being and that guy that packed up that alien being got infected and he ended up dying from the infection, they did a whole documentary about that. So people are talking about seeing things with red eyes. I believe that there was a being up here as a result in that area with red eyes, with UAPs in the area that people saw all the time.
Right.
Right. Without a doubt, that is to be true. The bridge collapse took the focus away, allowed them to take care of that and move it on or capture it or take.
Well, that's the big question. Would our government kill 160 people just to freaking cover up something like that?
I don't know. I'm going to say government.
But now David Grouse, the guy came out and did that whole thing, says that our government is willing to kill people to keep this a secret.
Right. I don't necessarily want to say government. I want to say that there are
shadow government.
There are organizations that are not that operate without government consent, like the MIBs, right? Right, the Men in Black,
right.
Like they could be working for an institution that's not necessarily under our federal government. So they engineered that whole thing. I'm gonna say engineered, but I'll just say here's what I know: the bridge collapsed, the sightings quit, this thing goes away forever, and then the town becomes a tourist town as a result of it.
Right. Well, let's back up a second, because do you realize that the Men in Black, the movie? It's funny. It's
the Will Smith movie.
Yeah, it's action packed. It's freaking. It's kind of a satire type of movie, right? Oh, did you know the government freaking put in almost a third of the budget for that movie? And that makes me go, oh, so they're trying to give us a soft landing here,
Right.
But why would the United States government give them money to freaking make a movie like that? That's just not even, when it's not even a serious movie.
Prime you for 2023, where we, right, depending on, I've said this last time, it's a foregone conclusion.
Right.
Reputable people have come out on the record. And now because of the law that's been passed that allows people to come out and speak about the things they've seen from a UAP, UFO perspective, you got guys saying we have alien beings captured. We've seen UAPs in our atmosphere for years. So get you primed over the years, little at a time.
I saw a skeptic last night say something about, well, why would they even care, these alien beings? Why would it'd be like us looking at an anthill, and why would we care,
Right.
But an anthill is something that you don't want near your front door or your back door or anywhere on your property, really, in case your kids get. So why wouldn't they just do it like we do the ants and just spray them and be done with them? And that's the scary thing to me about this whole thing. And everybody, it's funny because people think I'm a nut because I believe in Bigfoot. But isn't it just as nutty to think that we're being visited by aliens?
No.
I mean,
there is no difference mentally, and what took that to be socially acceptable? Favor, Captain Favor, and everybody else who work in government agencies come out on record for the first time after it's been declassified. Oh yeah, it's been real forever. We just never could say anything about it.
My thing is, like in music, man, I've tried to.
So all you need is to have somebody from the government to say, "Yeah, Bigfoot's always been real. We've always known it."
I have went over it because I'm trying to approach the podcast now like I do music, and I have to question myself: is this just something that you want to be true?
Yeah.
And is this something that you just love the thought of? And but then I look at all this freaking evidence and all these things that are. So I'm like, okay. So here I am. I'm a true believer in this being a simulation. Is there a table really here in our simulation? Just like I asked my bands, do you really think Japan exists?
Yeah, we had this going. Yeah.
And
only if you've been there.
Only if you've been there, because it doesn't exist. It just come up on a screen on TV. Because Japan, there's no freaking Well, I can't say that on here. I'm just saying there's not, nobody's getting murdered in Japan right now, because guess what? In my simulation, Japan doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, you can go, well, okay, is that the tree falling in the forest? No one hears it. Well, there's no one there to hear it. So is there a forest somewhere and a tree is falling right at this minute? As much as woods there is, I'm sure if that's part of your simulation, maybe so. I'm just saying, in my simulation, it's, and then I look, okay, if it's a simulation, then maybe in certain people's simulation, Bigfoot is real. And maybe in certain people's simulation, Bigfoot is not real. And maybe in certain people's simulation, there's aliens. And here's what the thing is, though, because it is kind of funny if everybody thinks the same thing. It's almost like if everybody prays about the same thing.
Right.
Let's say the whole world, if I had cancer, God forbid I don't, hope I don't anyway, but I don't. But I'm saying if I did, in the entire world, 8 billion people got on their knees and asked the Creator to heal me, I would probably be healed. You know, and that's just a fact. You know, me and Hugo Ferrara has talked about on here. And it's like, because the power of prayer is real. The power of people, the power of people thinking a certain direction. And that's what's even more scary about the alien thing, because now there's millions of people going, they're real.
Right.
So what's going to happen? They're real.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if we can choose them or not, because if you're not a simulationist or a matrix person or whatever, that's fine. But there's no doubt about it. Look at us.
Right.
Even if there is people there, and I believe there is aliens that are coming in here, we're still very special in the Creator, in God's eyes. We are obviously not just a drop in the bucket of life, you know. There's something special about humans, you know. And it's scary to me, someone thinking that there's not other beings out there.
I always have been a skeptic at heart, right? Not a skeptic from a malice perspective. I'm a skeptic of, if there is a rating to be had and there is a dollar to be earned from what you're telling me,
Right.
You have to almost look at it like you're trying to gain money and you're trying to get ratings. Like back in the day, my wife used to watch us one of them ghost stories on A&E or one of them shows all the time, and he never saw or found anything. But every show, like, oh, what was that? Oh, like get you involved. And I'm not saying ghosts aren't real. I'm just telling you. And I would say they never capture any. I'm not saying all of them don't, but this particular one never captures anything, never sees anything. But yet he has to find a way to get you involved and keep watching. So I won't use that example. That's my philosophy initially. What do you have to gain from telling me this information? And I treat that, so it's up to me to go do the work myself. Why my wife and I went to Point Pleasant. Why? Right. I'm going to go talk and listen to people tell me their takes. I'm going to look them in their face. I want to see them tell me, because the eyes are windows to the soul. Right. And you know, game recognizes game, right? You can't bullshit a bullshitter sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm looking at him. Okay, this person really believes what they're saying. Now, right. So it's true to them. So that's credible for me.
Right.
Right. So somewhere along the line, there is the sensational version of the story, and then there's the scientific part of the story, and then there's the truth usually lies in the middle. And that's with anything that we talk about, that I go out and talk about.
Again, though, there you go with the two versions of things. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't want to keep using me and old lady as something, but I'm just saying, though, her version of a fight is going to be different than my version of a fight. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter what it is in life. I mean, that's the thing. In her reality, I did something stupid, you know, and most of the time in my reality, I did something stupid too. But I'm just saying, I'm sorry to get back to the middle, you know. Just meet me in the middle, honey. Right. I'm an idiot, sorry. But no, you know, everybody's seeing the same thing. It's okay. Is there? And here's the problem I got. So. The problem is was it a huge owl? No.
So this,
you know, I mean, it sounds like an owl. But
this lady said it was 8 foot.
That's what I mean. There's not any 8 foot owls. But also too, in the defense of the Mothman, I have to say, or defense of the owl, I mean. In defense of the owl, some people freaking when they see something, they exaggerate or they just miscalculate by looking at it. But man, these days, I don't know though. Humans are pretty freaking sharp at doing that. Even in 66, I'm saying, back in the freaking 1800s, man, I guess back in the freaking, 1200s or 1000 or before the 1,000-year mark, there was stories of not dinosaurs, but dragons. And, did dragons really exist? I mean, always there's something to the story. I mean, something, if it was a leftover, what I mean, if it was a pterodactyl or whatever, but there was something about it.
Here's what sells this whole thing to why I am a believer. At the level I am a believer. I'm not all the way into the sensational, like it's a giant moth-like thing with fluttery moth wings. There was definitely something there, and here's why. The moment the catastrophe happened, nobody saw it again. In any way, shape, or form.
Right.
It was always there. People in the farms, in the towns were having experiences, very extraterrestrial, UAP-like, and they seen this shadowy thing with red eye, and then the catastrophe happens. And then it's done.
Nothing.
So there's what I don't know. It's really going to depend on what avenue of reading. There's a famous author that moved into Point Pleasant to write the Mothman Prophecy book, and he really believes that it is very much online to some of the things that I'm telling you, we're seeing now. But the moment that the catastrophe happened, no one ever saw it or had any dealt with it again. Now, some people think it's because now the town's grieving and they don't have time to notice it the way that they've done. But, if it really was a giant thunderbird or 8-foot crane or an 8-foot owl, odds are I'd like to think it's staying in the area and you're going to see it again, but no one ever saw it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's true. And if somebody killed it, they'd be like, I got an 8-foot owl, man. I'm going to get that thing mounted.
Right. Or like, make me $1 million. I caught them off, man. Where's my $1 million check? I'm rich.
I caught him off, man.
Make my movie. I caught the Mothman.
Man, dude, try to hit on my wife, man. I pegged his ass with a shotgun, man. Get the hell off my property, man.
Right.
You know how Virginia is.
For sure.
There are some parts of Virginia that are on another level of crazy,
Especially West Virginia.
Because,
dude, when I roll through West Virginia, you got to get off the interstate and drive 28 miles of West Virginia road along the side of the river. And you're looking like, man,
I didn't bring you out here.
I didn't bring my protection. Just
Yeah. I know what you mean. I just got asked a question this morning by Scotty Austin. Are you taking your pistol with you to California? Hell yeah, I am. We're going to the freaking Sequoias, the freaking hike. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be caught out there and not be able to protect my woman. There's no way. I don't know how I'm going to get the gun home because I got to fly back, but that's another discussion.
Right.
But.
And I don't mean that jab at that West Virginia. It's like, I'm going to go.
Oh, I'm not either.
I'm going to make it go on record. I've been to several states.
That's much worse than Virginia.
West Virginia is one of, if not the most beautiful state that I've ever driven through with them, them Appalachian hills, especially on the way to the capital. Now, we didn't get to see as much of the mountains driving through Point Pleasant as you would, say, going into, it's Charleston or going through to go to Virginia. Right. The heart of it's where it gets really interesting. But I tell my wife all the time, we live 3 hours away from one of the most beautiful states there are. You got to drive through some mountain terrain, but it's beautiful in West Virginia. So I'm not trying to throw any shade at the state of West Virginia. I am a fan.
No, it's just like Missouri. Missouri is a beautiful state,
And I've been trying to get there to go fishing at the Ozarks too.
It's beautiful over there, man. I mean, it is beautiful.
You ever been to the Ozarks?
I mean, I'm from Missouri, yeah.
But you've been...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been to the Ozarks a shit ton, it's like, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful state, man. It's like, and it's a lot of rural area. But speaking of that, man, I'm going to ask you about this movie. I haven't got to see it yet. What was it? Goddamn, something of freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom. And I did watch some of the podcasts you sent me. And what's the guy's name? The actor.
Jim Shavar.
See, I can't say his name.
I can't. You know what's interesting is that it's the guy that played Jesus in Passion of the Christ.
Right.
And his initials are JC.
Oh, that's weird. That's weird. He is extremely, made me when I saw some of the podcasts today, this morning because I was watching it to kind of refresh what we were talking about. Man, it really affected me the way he talked.
Yeah.
And now when I say fuck and shit like that, I'll go, okay, hang on here. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I just need to rethink about how I think about things and everything.
Jim Saviezel.
Saviezel, okay.
Saviezel.
Jim Saviezel. What a gifted guy, but The Passion of Christ was amazing. And how was the movie?
So before I get to that, I want to stay on that point. And he's went on record to say that when he first started working with Mel Gibson about talking about the Passion of the Christ, that Mel Gibson told him, "You'll make this movie, and it'll ruin your acting career in Hollywood."
And it did.
And, he never got considered for major Hollywood studio. He got typecasted like he's a faith-based actor, and anybody who believes in power is a faith-based actor. But it did. He never got to work on anything remotely close like a big budget film. But he's absolutely right, and it also did it to Mel Gibson. Right. Now I keep talking about it, but anyway, it did. And he was on a podcast, and he was the one that you're talking about. You could tell he's an actor, right? I have to be skeptical a little bit, like how much of this is part of the game. But he's on a podcast with a real guy who's really been in the CIA.
And what's his name?
Sean Ryan.
I think Sean Ryan's an actor too.
And I looked it up. I didn't see that he was.
Really?
Yeah.
God, he looks just like somebody.
He does.
He looks like somebody, this other actor. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So he goes on this guy's podcast. So there's credibility with being on. It's like me, if I'm coming on to talk about music and I'm on Malcolm Springer's podcast, I got credibility. I'm talking to a guy who's part of the business, right?
Right.
So he's on, and you're absolutely right. Like he looks like he is constantly under duress when he's talking about it. And he talked about how Hollywood treated him after he made Passion of the Christ, and how he talked about, the currency of Hollywood, like you and I talked about the adrenochrome thing, how, he's been on record to say that is a real thing. So it went on, like he really derailed his career, right? But he also says this, he's like, I had Lamborghinis and houses and money, but as a man of faith, I had to come to terms with that all these things that I get are fine, right? But I have to be okay with giving it back.
Right.
And he had to give it all back because he realized I am doing the work I'm doing now with this movie, and obviously movies beyond, is higher than the materials that what Hollywood has to offer. They want you to be engaged with the Lamborghinis and the houses and the billions and the millions and the Oscars. He cares nothing about any of that.
Right.
He cares about none of that. So fast forward, there's a, and this is one of how he comes across as being credible because he's always stuck his ground. I will not do scenes that are distasteful. That have me disrespecting my wife or my family or my religion. He'll play like SWAT or police or investigator type stuff, but he won't do, like he said, I won't do sex scenes. He goes, and I will say a cuss word if it's believable, if it's real. Like if it's like, I'm not going to put smut or cuss just for the sake of having it in a movie. Because like I'll talk to writers and directors about this is really not necessary for this story. This makes the story less than if you're just going to throw these things in here.
Right.
Right. So he stuck by his guns, and if you watch him, he doesn't come across as a hard to work with actor. He actually seems very withdrawn. And he had a situation that he talked about he didn't go in great detail about it, about something that happened to him when he was 16 years old.
Right.
That he didn't want to talk about. And he carried it with him forever. He had an experience with trafficking, and we can only left imagine what that would have been. And so I couldn't imagine a better actor to be a part of this movie that the Angel Studios decided to make. And I'm not going to talk like I know anything as an expert. I'm not going to talk like anything other than the facts as I know it. And the facts that I know it are the following: that This movie is about Tim Ballard, who was Homeland Security, who was working on a case to liberate a little boy and a little girl from captivity. He was able to get the boy, and then his job told him the job's done here. You can't go any further with the girl. We're, for whatever reason, shut it down. We're done.
That's really weird.
Right. And when the boy was actually caught at the border, right? And Tim Ballard ends up having a long conversation. There's a point in the movie, and I don't want to be overly spiritual or religious here, but allegedly Tim Ballard said that when God calls upon you, you can't hesitate. When I call you to do what I need you to do, I can't have you hesitating. So when Homeland Security would not allow him to go any further, according to this movie, according to the story, he called his wife and told him, he was like, I've seen this, I've seen things, and I've seen videos of things that would only crush the human spirit, and it's tore me apart. Me being able to rescue this boy's sister, this little boy's sister, is just the beginning phase of helping me putting my pieces back together. Because what ended up happening is he ends up busting this gentleman, I think it's in California somewhere, who is posting on dark websites little kids for sale, 2 to 6 years old.
And that's really happening.
Yes.
It's so.
Whoa. According to things out there for you to research, it certainly appears it's really happening. Now you got a real guy, a real character, a real member of Homeland Security who tells you this has happened. It absolutely has happened. Now you're just left up to believe whether or not you're going to believe someone who's credible and worked for Homeland Security and tells you he's done these things, whether or not you choose to go, well, I'm still not going to believe him. I don't care what you say. Now, you just got to be kind of naive at that point. You're just really being dismissive. So he did this bust of this guy who's putting things up on the dark web, selling this boy and this girl were lured in. This is where it gets into the details of how this is able to happen across the globe. In South America, they were doing a talent scout. This little girl and a boy, this little girl could sing and play the drum, and a madam sees her and sells the entertainment. Well, I can make you a star. Come to audition. Tells the dad, we can make her a star, and he can make that little boy. He's a model. We can make money. Impoverished nations, right? So the father takes him to this tryout, talent scout thing, and this is all per Tim Ballard. This is the story that got him started.
This is a true story.
This is a true story. Takes him to the talent scout. Take him to, I think it's a motel type thing. Not a room necessarily, but like a conference center, right? And they walk in. There's people. There's photo shoots and the whole 9 yards. She looks at the father and goes, "No stage moms or dads allowed. They'll be done at 7. Come back and get them." It's red flag number 1. Red flag number 1. But what makes someone do that? You're chasing your dream. You're poor. You're living in an impoverished nation. Someone who's looking to part with money and wealth finds favor in like, we can make this. She can sing. She can sing and play this drum. She's really exceptional. Make the boy a child model. Long story short, they go into they get lured in by the entertainment business. He comes back at 7, ghosted. Whole thing shut down. Nobody's there. No equipment. Nobody has no record, no memory of anybody being there. So they were all in on it.
Wow.
It went from there to them quickly being in the back of a van, talking about, we're going to the beach, do another photo shoot. This is the middle of the night, by the way. And then next thing you know, these kids end up in a shipping container being shipped across the country, across the world. Mm-hmm. So, the boy got sold to a guy off one of these sites, right? And how Tim was able to find all this out was they've been tracking through the likes of like the gentleman who was hacking into these sites. The people were preying on kids, and they were following this one guy for a while, and he ends up posting it up, and they bust this dude. And Tim happens to stumble upon a library of videotape footage of this guy who has sold kids and gotten video footage of the things that they've done to him. And Tim Ballard sees a video of what looks like a 5, 6, 7-year-old boy. And then next thing you know, he's looking at the TV and you see him start to cry. And that's when he realized, like it's really torn him up. And now he's in. Because once you see, it's like I told you last time, so once you see something like that, you have to do something.
Right.
You have to do something. But it's bigger than you could ever imagine, right? So kind of talking all over the place here.
No, but
he ends up catching the boy. The guy buys this boy, American man buys this boy in Mexico, bringing him across the border. Tim Ballard's there to greet that and rescues the boy. The boy, they ask him, he's like, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Teddy Bear." And he goes, "That's not the name I'm asking. Like, not that name. That's the name his purchaser gave him, right? The guy that bought him."
How sick is that?
Terribly sick. He goes, "Are you?" And he calls him by his real name, and the little boy looks at him. And the actors are amazing because this boy cries like emphatically. And then he has this necklace around his neck. And this is the part that gets you. That was true. He has a necklace that says Timoteo, which was a necklace that his sister gave him before they got separated. And it's like a saint of some sort, like Saint Christopher protect us. It's like something in their country.
Right.
This Tim Ballard's name is Timoteo, and in their translates to his name is Timoteo in their country. But he has this little boy has this pendant on his necklace. So he takes it off, and after he's been talking with Tim for a minute, and he's like, "My sister gave me this." He's like, "You're the guy that saves kids." And he just kind of looks at him. He goes, "Can you save my sister, please?" Well, he don't have any idea, but this is what started his journey, right? So he takes the pendant, and the movie goes on the quest about how he was able to infiltrate and rub shoulders with some of the most,
Scumbag people on there.
Yeah, he had to act in a pretty despicable manner to say things to get them to win favor, because that's how he ends up getting the information he needs, because he has to make them believe. Even when the guy says, "If you want me to believe that you're one of us," because he has this the guy that he caught in California in jail. That's how he ends up getting. Once he saw the video, he quickly goes back to this guy's cell. You think he's going to rough him up, right? Like going to do something to him. But he ends up doing the completely opposite. He goes, "I need your help." And he starts to sell it like he's one of them. And that guy goes, "Man, if you think I'm going to believe you're one of us, you're sadly mistaken." But he does it. And he ends up winning that guy over. And that's how he ends up finding that little boy. And then he ends up getting the guy arrested. So anyway, I'm telling you the movie. And then, so he gets all this information, rubs the elbows with some of the biggest scumbags there are in the world, and he ends up finding a way to go and through trying to rescue this boy's sister, he runs up into, you get to see how deep the network is in his perspective, right? Now, I'm not saying it's mine. I'm just saying that this is what the story he's told, that it is global, and the entertainment business is used to get them in, and they're within minutes, they're in, they're out, they're in containers going to certain locations, and they're on websites on the dark web to be bought and sold, and terrible, despicable things are done to them. And there's an interesting statistic. Because, I don't ever want, like I told you last time when we were talking about, I don't ever want it to seem like I believe all this to be 100% true. But man, Malcolm, since the last time you and I talked, it's really hard to refute now. Because now you got a guy telling you.
Yeah.
And here's what he says. It's now surpassed the illegal weapons trade race, makes more money than the illegal arms race, makes more money than drugs. $150 billion a year industry, according to him. Now, that's a big number. I don't know how they get that money. And Tim...
I don't see how they can figure it up.
Well, you averages. He said that if you got a 4-year-old and forgive the content. I don't want it to be gross, and I want to be. It is a hard listen to, but part of what this movie is doing is they're trying to raise awareness to get it out there as much as possible. So now you force the governments of the world to take action, because right now nothing's being done about it. Nothing's being done, and after I watched this movie, I'm my feelings a little bit, and I look at my wife. It's like, how can the Army or the National Guard or the Marines or any other or the British Royal Marines, like, why aren't they, once they figure out what's going on, why aren't they sweeping in here and leveling this place? And it's, because it goes into parts of the country where there are guerrillas and rebels, like guerrilla rebels, like parts that even governments and armies won't go into. So it's really a complex situation.
I'll tell you why. Because they can't get the kids back and resell them. And they can the drugs.
Yeah.
And they can the arms. And they can stuff like that. They can seize them and they can resell them and make money. And that's just the truth.
That's true. Here's what he says. 2 million kids are affected. Not my numbers. This is what Tim Ballard says. 2 million kids are affected just by the sex trafficking of the nature of it. Add another 2 million on top of that and listen, if you want me, I can say it on your podcast, I'm going to say it. Organ harvesting.
Right.
And adrenochrome.
That's what's going on.
Right. So,
but that's not always. It's sometimes sexual. So
yeah, it's mostly that. And so you're talking about. He talked about how it surpass the arms race. Well, it's easy. Like, you have a 4-year-old. So from 4 to 18, you have 14 years.
Right.
Well, let's say not 18. Let's say up to 10. You got 6 years, is what he said. You got till that kid's 10 years old. You got 6 years, and he can be of service 10 times a day, every day, until he's 10 years old. So you're making more money off one child than you ever would any brick of drugs or pound of drugs.
What? Reusable.
Yeah.
Hey, it's sick to say that, but it's the truth. It's like.
So listen, I'm not coming on your podcast to tell you that this is factual. I'm just telling you that now there is a movie being made that's not getting any support. I tell people about it, like, what do you mean? What's this movie you're talking? What? Well, we knew when the next Avengers movie was coming out. We knew when the Flash movie came out. We knew when the Batman movies come out. Like, how is this? And he goes, we met every obstacle in the world to make sure that movie didn't get put out. But so we got it out, and they're even having you doing a pay it forward campaign where at the end of the movie, Jim Caviezel talks about, look, this is what's going on here, and I'm putting my name to this because I believe in this cause. Scan this barcode, pay tickets for people, and pass it forward, giving them out for free. Like, so they're actually like, you can scan and buy 2 tickets and just give them to somebody. Like, they just want to bring enough awareness to where now it has to be, it's in your lap. Now the information is there for you to do something with. How much longer are we going to act like that everything's just fine? That nothing's really going on. Now, it just seems, man, we are now at the point where it can no longer be ignored.
Right.
And what's interesting more to me, man, and I don't mean this to be condescending or validating in any way, but do you remember when this topic was a big deal right around Trump was the president?
Yeah.
And QAnon was talking about it, and I'm not a QAnon conspiracy theorist at all. But if you talked about the trafficking of kids and the adrenochrome, then you're a Trumper and you're an idiot, and it's a white ring conspiracy theory. Remember I talked about all you got to do is give things time, and it reveals itself. So we've given it how many years? 6 years since his presidency? 2 years since his presidency's been over with. Had really nothing to do with him. It's always been there. It just under his administration, visibility was brought to it. For whatever reason, I don't know what that is. But it just seems to be during the time Trump became the president, that during that administration, I'm not crediting him for bringing any visibility to it. I'm just saying that's when it started hitting people's radar.
Right.
And you were called an idiot. Fool, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, You're just a Trumper. And now as time has passed and we're in a Biden era presidency, now there's a movie about it.
Right.
That you can't ignore. So it had really nothing to do with Trump and QAnon.
Right. Man, I'm right there with you. I'm definitely not a Trumper. I'm definitely not anybody because I'm going to be honest with you. I think we need somebody new in there.
Why don't you run? Why don't you run?
Are you kidding me? Oh God!
I'll be your vice.
I keep worrying about one of my kids
between me, you, Case,
and bringing up my past. I mean, it's over.
Hey, God uses the most imperfect people to do His most perfect work. That's what I believe. But between me, you, was it Case and Junior, we'd have an awesome cabinet.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! We'd set this motherfucker straight.
I don't mean to laugh after talking about such a heavy topic, but here's what I do know, Malcolm. To be honest with you, dog. I believe in what Shavizo said. When God calls you, you can't hesitate. You can't act. I've always felt a certain way about when I heard this because I told you, like, it can't be true. Because if that was true, you want to hurt people. And man, listen, Tim Ballard, and I just tell you, he started after he left the CIA. He started his own organization called OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. And you can go up and sign up and contribute and help. And I was like, I don't want to seem like a radical sensationalist to your viewers, but there was a point I was like, where do I go to get a weapon? And I want to go with you.
Right.
I got a military back. Let's go. I'm 51 years old. I'm probably very not near as effective as I used to be, but I want to go help. And he'll tell you, I got who I got, right? So here's how you help. You can either contribute, and that's where it gets crazy. Like, okay, now you want to get money, right? But I keep my faith in what that organization is doing because people have tied their names to him.
Right.
Right. Shavizel. And now apparently, again, Gibson is supposed to be, although he's came out and said, I am not doing a 4-part documentary about child trafficking, but I think he is narrating and producing one with Tim Ballard because there's a picture of Mel on the internet with the OUR hat on. So he's definitely doing something.
Right.
Right. And you can listen to Jim Caviezel on that podcast I sent you.
Well, thank God for that guy for stepping up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Geez, it's just so freaking
Malcolm,
breathtaking.
This is what I'll tell you. More than anything else, take the sensationalize and you take the political ties and the government agencies, you take all that off the table. What has this time having this information done for me as a father? Well, I'm forced to have very uncomfortable conversations with my son.
Right, I am too. My kids, I'm having uncomfortable conversations with them.
In this movie, at the beginning, real live footage. Tim Ballard says this is real footage taken on stings as the credits are coming on, of mothers having their babies yanked out of their arms in these countries and abducted in broad daylight.
Oh yeah,
and then teenagers being lured to the entertainment business, TikTok, Instagram. Like you think about all the things that are at our teenagers' disposal today. Right. You have to have very uncomfortable conversations with your children today because it's grown at a level, depending on who you read and and the avenues you choose for your citing your resources. $150 billion a year, if that's true, which I believe it is a number so great that it means it's climbing at an exponential rate. And it's usually coming from countries that are impoverished, right? And we talked about, he talked about Tim talked about in one of his podcasts that it is undocumented babies. Like people are having babies undocumented. That way there's no trace and track of them. So that's not even, he's talking about the 2 million, he's talking about the ones that are documented that went missing. That's not even talking about the ones that are in the world that no one has a trace of because there's no birth certificate, no nothing of.
That's pretty.
I don't ever want to come on your show and do this. This is the truth. Your people need to listen to it. And if they don't, they're idiots or look, all of you all are naive. Like I don't ever want to come across that way. Right? All I want to tell you is like plenty of people are having these conversations now on podcasts. And now there's a movie about it. Now it's up to us as a society to determine how much, what
are we going to take and what are we not going to take?
How much of it are you going to take and what are you going to do about it? I know me in that movie, I got tears in my eyes. And I'm like, I'm sitting there like, man,
Right.
do something.
And that's how I deal with that kind of thing. Is I look at it as a simulation.
Yeah.
But what I've told my children is, don't ever, ever force me and your mother into that part of the simulation. Don't do things stupid.
Yeah.
Know that you're precious to someone, but not like you're precious to us. You know, and that's the thing, because you're worth a lot of money. I got a beautiful daughter, and I can't help it, but sometimes when I can't find her, I'm yelling, and I have to sit her down. I'm not yelling at you because I don't love you. I'm yelling at you because I do love you.
If I didn't love you, I wouldn't say a word to you.
If I didn't love you, I wouldn't bust your butt. I wouldn't freaking care, you know?
Right.
If I didn't want you to be a good person, I'd let you stay on the phone all night.
Right.
But you're not going to stay on the phone all night. You know, with your friends or whoever, because I don't know, when we go to bed, I don't know who you're on the phone with or who is contacting you, and they will be able to find out where you're located by just looking at, because there's a location thing on, I'm not sure on that, but I think there's a location thing on TikTok. There's a location thing on all those sites, and those chat rooms and stuff like that, man. There's locations where they can find your phone. So the predator might be outside just waiting on you to come out so they can nab them and take off with you.
Right.
And and it's like, I'm not going to have that. It's like, why would I have enough stress as it is to stress out about that. So let's just cut it off at the knees and know that this is not happening. And because American girls are a big thing in Ukraine. That's what that's their big thing.
Yeah.
You bring these American girls over here to Ukraine and sell them to these Arabs and people like that. And it's like, it's disgusting, but it's what is happening.
I'm gonna ask you a question, and I heard this, and it was extremely, I was like, please don't let that be true. And I haven't put any more effort in to prove or disprove this, because this is what he says. Like Shavizel and Tim Ballard both said this. What do you think the number one country of recipient of child sex work is? What country do you think that would be? Who would be number one?
That's America. That's disturbing. What's disturbing is living in a city like Nashville and knowing that it's probably right around us.
Yeah.
It has to be.
And I'm not talking
numbers.
17, 16.
Right.
I'm talking
like
10 and under.
Yeah. 5-year-old girls and boys.
Now, this is not me saying I know. I'm just telling you what Tim's has went on record to say, and what Shavizel has went on record to say, and what the podcast that they've been on, and the movies now that they've made is telling the people, and what they're calling people to do. And I'll piggyback on something I said to you last time when we talked about this. It's like, if all of this is for entertainment, is it possible? Yeah. Is it probable? Not to me.
No.
But it is a possibility. Like, you don't know what side's up. It's all for the sake of getting the illusion that this is what it is. And if that's the case, then there's really no hope
for humanity
at all, because you can't believe in anything. You can't believe in anything. If all that is a ruse, and this whole thing has always been an elaborate hoax to get a certain type of individual engaged, because they know you're going to click, and they know you're going to watch it, and they know you're going to, like me, where can I go join? Where can I go contribute, right, to make money? Because I've always told you, circle back to what I said. Where's the angle? Is there a dollar to be made, and is there a rating to be gained?
Right.
So if there's a chance to that, you can't ignore that. But the larger part of the situation for me is, okay, what do I know to be true? Then he's went on record. He really did exist. He really did do these works. He really done these stories. He's really telling people this. An actor who has been shunned by Hollywood has put his name to it because, for obvious reasons, he's a man of faith. And then he has been on Sean Ryan's show, not to be plugging somebody else on your plug, but he's been on his podcast, who is a member of the three-digit government entities, and Sean is a firm believer, and he's had people on his podcast talking, oh, it's a real thing. So where there's smoke, there's fire, like I've always said. Right. There is a level, since the last time when you and I talked about this, it's a much larger level of truth than it was the last time I was here.
Right.
Because I, think there have been developments along the way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
I'm not gonna tell you that I know for a fact that they're doing, the eating of the stuff, but Tim talks like,
Where's drumming up awareness?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean,
because that's all the movie's doing. It's there for a reason. You can watch it and come to your own conclusion.
And a confident fact is it's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a confident fact.
And nobody can shut you down because of it, because it's awareness. Like, okay, is there a movie? Yes. Does this guy exist? Yes. Is this guy having these conversations in the world for real? Yes.
Yeah. Man, it's been a good podcast, man.
It really has. We talked about a bunch of things.
We have a long podcast, but really great. Man, thank you so much.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, and thank you for coming down here, and let's make some music.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
Suck it.